Alright, this is your boy Life of Darius, aka Dre the Martian, and we are back. We're back today with a channel that some of y'all might actually know. We're here with Vinyl Rewind. Did Paul McCartney really die in 1966? Man, what? Yes. Outside of just the helter-skelter Charles Manson comments I saw all through my YouTube over the past weeks, I also saw a lot of comments talking about the Paul is dead theory. Now, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, this theory don't make much sense to me, just being as Paul, he's obviously still alive, right? He's obviously still alive. He's damn near 90 years old. He's kicking it. He's still on tour, actually, as I've heard recently. So he's obviously doing pretty good for himself. But apparently there's some type of conspiracy that Paul's a clone, right? That Gucci Mane Paul McCartney, you know what I'm saying? That Kodak Black Paul McCartney, they cloned him. Now, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't know of any reason why they would need to clone Mr. Paul McCartney, right? Sir Paul McCartney. I understand he had a lot of influence in the 60s, right? But cloning, especially back then, like that just sounds crazy to me, and I'm definitely eager to get into this Vinyl Rewind. This is a great channel right here. I've already watched a couple of Vinyl Rewind's videos on the Beatles, and I'm just telling y'all right now, if you love the Beatles and you don't know about this channel, go subscribe. But before we get to the video, I do have two very major announcements I need to make to y'all real quick, okay? First off, for the Beatles fans, man, I've been struggling to kind of find a direction to take my channel, y'all, right? Like, all of this has kind of come very fast, so I've kind of been working as I'm going, trying to figure out, like, what I'm gonna do with this, how I'm gonna do this, and I think I finally come to a conclusion. So starting this week, I believe Wednesday, we're going to be starting the Beatles Marathon. We're about to go through every single Beatles album that I have not listened to yet. And for the real fans out there, y'all would know the two Beatles albums that I already know from track 1 to the final track are Sgt. Pepper's and Magical Mystery Tour, right? And the two Beatles albums I've reacted to already are Abbey Road and the White Album. So that leaves every other album to react to, right? You know, some people were saying I wouldn't like the early 60s Beatles stuff and that I probably shouldn't give it much time. And then there are a lot of people saying, no, start from the beginning and go to the end and finish it off. That's how you're supposed to listen to the Beatles, right? Listen, I can see where both sides are coming from, right? My Beatles, I tend to prefer the Beatles, you know, post Rubber Soul and things of that nature. It's kind of why I never even acknowledged those albums when I was talking about Beatles albums I didn't listen to. But there are songs from that era that I already do like Help, Twist and Shout. There's a couple joints out from that era that I already know, so I say, why not? So yes, that will be happening starting this Wednesday. We're going to do Please Please Me Wednesday, with the Beatles Thursday. What's the next album? I think A Hard Day's Night Friday. Then there's another album after that I don't know the name of. It's going to be done Friday. I'm sorry. I tried to remember it. I really did. So we're going to have reactions on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're going to skip Sunday. We're going to take a little day off of the Beatles. And then Monday, we're going to come back to finish it off next week, the entire Beatles marathon. And don't take this the wrong way, but I was doing the Led Zeppelin reaction, and I just kind of realized it's hard for me to move on to other bands when it's still the biggest band looming over me with about 6 or 7 projects I haven't listened to on my channel, right? So yeah, that's that. We're going to be starting the Beatles Marathon this week. I'll have more information on it in the community notes and probably in the comments down below. Y'all, just tap in, man. We on a journey. I'm going to take y'all on a journey. Y'all just got to sit, relax. I'm going to be cooking. That's all y'all need to know. And one more announcement real quick before we get into the video. I did start a Patreon. And I'm just going to be honest, you guys don't need to subscribe to my Patreon to get the full Life of Darius experience, right? This Patreon is more so for people who've requested more. The big issue that people have with reaction videos on YouTube is the chopping up and the cutting of the songs, right? And as YouTubers, we understand that, but it's a necessary evil to avoid copyrights, right? Y'all wouldn't be able to see the videos if I didn't chop them up like I did. So my Patreon, I put a little option, just a little $5 a month option. There's also a 7-day free trial if you just want to, you know, come and check the vibes out, make sure that the extended versions of my reactions are actually cool. But yeah, that's how it is. If you want to see the ad-free version of these reactions, the entirety of these reactions, plus a bunch of other benefits that I'm going to talk about in a more Patreon dedicated video, go subscribe, y'all. Go subscribe for sure. And don't be scared by that $25 option. That $25 option is just for anybody who wants to go above and beyond. I don't really expect anybody to go for that, but it's just, you know, read, man, read it. Y'all see what it's all about, bro. I'm going to make a Patreon video soon to really break it down. But yeah, that's it for the announcements, man. Let's get into the video. Did Paul McCartney really die in 1966? What? Let's go. This is crazy.
This episode is brought to you by Dashlane. The Paul is Dead hoax is one of the strangest stories in rock history. It almost doesn't seem real, but for 2 months in the fall of 1969, college students all across the United States were obsessed with discovering hidden messages on Beatles album covers and in the songs themselves.
That's crazy.
At the height of its popularity, the conspiracy theory spread around the world, spawning novelty songs, write-ups, and even prime-time TV news coverage. On today's episode of Strange and Unusual Tales, we're going to dive into the history of one of music's biggest urban legends and see if there's any truth to the rumor that Paul McCartney died in 1966.
What the fuck?
Together, collectively, they thought Paul McCartney had died. I understand that they still do.
McCartney was killed 3 years ago in an
My
auto
dead ass got chills right
accident.
now. Break this down to me, Vinyl.
The gist of the theory is that after an argument during a Beatles recording session on November 9th, 1966, Paul McCartney sped off in his car only to be decapitated in an auto accident when he lost control of his vehicle.
What?
The UK security service MI5 advised the band to find a replacement, for they feared that if the news of Paul's death got out, mass hysteria would spread among Beatles fans, leading to civil unrest and possible mass suicide.
I can see
the
that.
band held a Paul McCartney lookalike contest, and the winner was a Scottish orphan named William Shears Campbell, otherwise known as Billy Shears. After undergoing some minor plastic surgery, the Beatles taught him how to sing, act, and play music just like Paul. Luckily for Billy, his job was made easier by the fact that the Beatles recently retired from touring, and they were all set to don a new look for their upcoming album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. It's unknown how this theory got started, but the earliest printed mention of the rumor was in the February 1967 issue of Beatles Book Monthly. It was a small one-paragraph article that dispelled a small rumor that Paul was killed in a car accident on the 7th of January 1967. This seemed to quell the rumor for some time until the fall of 1969 when the rumor resurfaced. At first, it was just a story told at parties on college campuses across the U.S., but then a caller phoned a popular Detroit radio station and got DJ Russ Gibb to play some Beatles music that contained hidden messages live on the air. One of those listening that afternoon was college student Fred Laborde, and the story gave him an idea. He was tasked with writing a review of the newly released Abbey Road album, and instead of doing the same old track-by-track article, he decided to look deeper into the conspiracy and see if the Beatles' latest record held any clues of Paul's death. To his amazement, the cover alone was ripe with evidence. He wrote up what he found, and the story was published in the university newspaper on October 14th. His article was quickly picked up by other college papers and radio stations in both the US and the UK. Suddenly, the rumor spread like a wildfire, and fans became alarmed and wanted answers. The Beatles' management office was bombarded with questions of Paul's health, receiving nearly 3,000 phone calls a day. When McCartney was asked to confirm to the press that he was very much alive, he refused to give the rumor any credence, believing that the whole thing would just die down on its own. Paul just wanted to be left alone and live a quiet family life on his farm. News outlets couldn't confirm nor deny the rumor, so they ran with the story. This resulted in the conspiracy becoming a mainstream topic of concern, producing many newspaper articles, opinion pieces, and novelty songs. Eager to get the final say on the matter, a group of reporters from Life magazine trespassed onto McCartney's Scottish farm during the last week of October. Paul was furious and initially chased them away, but after realizing the photographers captured some unflattering photos of himself, he called them back and agreed to an interview in exchange for the negatives. Paul became the cover story for the November 7th issue, and that seemed to...
What? Hey man, that's my goal one day, to have pull like Paul McCartney, bro. They came up to him, stalked him on the ranch. Got some unflattering pictures of him, and he was like, "Oh, well, I can't let them pictures get out. I got to give them some access." so they give me the pictures back, man. That's influence that I need, man. Shout out Paul. Shout out to Macca for that one, man. And how they got this footage of Paul, but they ain't got the Wilt Chamberlain 100 point, man. I ain't even gonna talk. Have any of y'all? Was y'all there for Wilt Chamberlain? Did he really score 100 points? Because how they got footage of Paul on his ranch, but they ain't got footage? Come on now. Come on, man.
Paul became the cover story for the November 7th issue, and that seemed to settle the matter once and for all, with the rumor all but dying out after the magazine was published. Now, the bulk of the evidence for this theory revolves around the idea that the remaining Beatles were racked with guilt over hiding Paul's death, and so they left clues of the cover-up for the fans to discover. I don't have time in this video to cover every clue found since 1969, so instead my focus will be on the ones most widely cited at the height of the rumor's popularity.
Break
And
that
we'll
down,
start
break that
with the
down.
first album since Paul's supposed death, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Now, the cover seems innocent enough until you look deeper and you see what others have described as a funeral.
That's crazy
the Beatles
coincidence.
Are pallbearers
That
as
this
they
is the
are
very
all
next
turned
album cover?
towards
That's
him,
crazy
with
coincidence.
Paul facing front, dead on. The British comedian Izzy Bond holds his open palm above Paul's head, signifying death in Eastern mysticism. Paul is the only member holding a black instrument, also a death indication. If you hold a mirror to the bass drum head, it reveals a hidden message. The number 1 plus the word 1 stands for the 11th month, or November. Then we see the Roman numeral for 9. This represents the day Paul died, November 9th, with the following message, he died, reinforcing this theory. As we move down the album, we see what appears to be a freshly buried grave with the shape of a left-handed guitar made out of flowers. Paul was the only left-handed member of the group, and if you look closely, you can see that the flowers spell out Paul ? Opening up the gatefold, we find a delightful picture of the Fab Four, but Paul has a patch on his shoulder with the letters OPD. Many believe this stands for officially pronounced dead, which is the British equivalent of DOA, or dead on arrival. Moving to the back of the album, the only Beatle with his back to us is Paul.
Nah. They was playing into it. They had to have been playing into it. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is too many coincidences right after this happened, bro. So it's either that it really happened or they were just playing hard into it. You gotta understand, these 4 blokes were way ahead of their time mentally, bro. They, like, if they were just playing along with this, they were trolling, they were doing social media trolling way before it was cool. I'm gonna let the rest of this video play, man, but I ain't gonna lie, bro. I expected some BS on here, bro. It seemed kind of not concrete, but I'm following. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm following. Back to the video, but I'm following.
Only Beatle with his back to us is Paul. Coincidence? Perhaps, but look where George is pointing. It's a lyric from She's Leaving Home. Wednesday morning at 5 a.m., the supposed time of Paul's death. The weird thing is, November 9th fell on a Wednesday in 1966.
Video, bro.
As we play the record, our first big piece of evidence happens right as the title track ends. You can hear the Beatles sing Billy Shears. On side 2, the song A Day in a Life strongly alludes to Paul's death.
He blew his mind out in a car.
On the cover of their follow-up record, Magical Mystery Tour, Paul is the only member dressed in black and standing in a crucifixion.
I was just thinking, like, yo, when they brought up the Sgt. Pepper's cover, I was thinking, like, hold on, the Magical Mystery, why? Ain't there like a black walrus or panda, whatever these niggas is on here? Like that, like, come on, bro. Like, is Paul dead? They clone Paul, they Gucci Mane Paul, bro. This is crazy.
Paul is the only member dressed in black and standing in a crucifixion pose, both strong indications of death. Looking above, if we connect the stars together, a phone number is revealed. Bruh. Depending on how you look at it, you could get one of a dozen different numbers.
Yeah.
When calling one of these on a Wednesday at 5 a.m. or 5 p.m., some people claim to get cryptic messages on the other end or actually talk to Billy Shears. Opening up the U.S. version of Magical Mystery Tour, we are greeted by a 24-page booklet full of clues, including 4 instances of hands above Paul's head. The first being on page 14, then in cartoon form on page 15, then again on page 18, and finally on page 24. On page 3, we see Paul with the message in front of him saying, I was. On the centerfold, we see Paul is the only one without shoes. His shoes have blood stains on them, and they are just above page number 13. But perhaps the most obvious clue is on page 23. Paul is the only one wearing a black flower, another symbol of death. Turning to the music towards the end of...
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna keep pausing, bro. I'm really trying to listen to this video, but this is too much piling on to me at once, bro. The black corsage, the rose, whatever that's called. And you gotta understand, at least from my point of view, it feels like Paul was definitely the most individualistic member of the Beatles, right? So I could see him doing this little stuff just to be different, right in there, but just to stand out from the other members. But it's like this is weird timing, bro. Weird timing. Let's get through the rest of this video, bro, because this is fucking crazy.
To the music towards the end of I Am the Walrus, buried deep in the cacophony, we can just barely hear voices reciting the death of Oswald from Shakespeare's King Lear. But even more brazen, when you play this section backwards, you can hear the demonic chanting, "Paul is dead, ha ha." Flipping over to side 2, Strawberry Fields Forever reveals what appears to be John saying, "I buried Paul." While the White Album itself lacks any visual clues, looking at the included poster, we find the only known photo of Billy Shears, pre-plastic surgery. Moving on to the music, the song Glass Onion contains a very obvious wink to the fans, as if John is confirming they're on to something.
Well, here's another clue for you all. Yeah, this threw me off during the reaction. The walrus was Paul.
At the end of I'm So Tired, we hear some gibberish. But when we play this backwards, we hear John say, "Paul is dead, man, miss him, miss him, miss him." Finally, if we play the beginning of Revolution 9 backwards, we hear probably the most convincing piece of evidence. "Turn me on, dead man."
Oh, hell no. Now this kind of creepy now, yo.
Yellow Submarine provides almost
this
no clues
now,
other than yet another hand above Paul.
No.
Moving on to Abbey Road, the cover shows the Beatles walking away from what appears to be a cemetery. John leads a procession dressed in white, looking Christ-like with his long hair. Ringo follows, dressed in black, resembling an undertaker. Paul walks behind, out of step with the rest of the Beatles and holding a cigarette in his right hand, contrary to the real Paul, who is left-handed. This Paul is also barefoot, suggesting a corpse. George takes up the rear, dressed in denim, resembling...
He the only one without shoes on? Bro, I've never looked this deep at the Abbey Road cover to see who had kicks on and who didn't, bro. This is crazy. Oh, man, I'm telling you, I'm not the conspiracy theory dude, y'all. It takes a lot to convince me of a conspiracy, man, and we're only halfway through this video, and Paul might be dead, y'all. But I don't know about the holding a cigarette with the right hand, bro, because I'm right-handed, and I hold my joint with the left hand sometimes, y'all. Y'all know how I go, man. So I don't know about that one, but the barefooted, my goodness, bro.
Barefoot, suggesting a corpse. George takes up the rear, dressed in denim, resembling a gravedigger. The Volkswagen Beetle in the background has a license plate 28IF, representing that Paul would be in his 28th year in 1969 if he was still alive. On the back, we find a series of dots that, if you connect them, form the number 3, which then reads 3 Beatles. Even that Life magazine interview wasn't enough for some theorists, as it was soon discovered that when you held up the cover to a strong light, the Mercury car ad on the other side can be seen running through the body of Paul. And while most of the Paul is dead proponents thought the Beatles were behind the rumor, there was a small subset that believed Capitol Records started the hoax as an elaborate publicity stunt to sell more records. And it's true that one unattended benefit of the rumor was a surge in Beatles album sales. Fans ended up buying multiple copies, often destroying their records when they played them backwards in search of more clues. Capitol knew the hoax was making them money, so they did nothing to stop it and had no shame capitalizing on the rumor themselves. And speaking of Capitol, some Paul is Dead believers found clues on the compilation album Yesterday and Today. On the recalled...
What the hell is this? Hey, are these dead babies? This is an album cover? Nah, there's no way this is an album cover. Why are the Beatles holding the limbs of dead babies in doctor outfits? Let's just finish this video, bro. Mentally, I don't know if I can handle it anymore. What the fuck?
On the compilation album Yesterday and Today. On the recalled cover, Paul is in the center, covered in meat and the bodies of headless baby dolls, both clearly an indication of his horrific car accident. On the reissued cover, everything looks innocent enough until you turn the record sideways, and now Paul is in a coffin. The only problem with using either of these covers is that they were made and released while the real Paul was still alive. Which brings us to the rebuttals. While these clues are entirely thought-provoking and some are quite convincing, there has to be a simpler explanation. And so let's go back to Sgt. Pepper's. If we look at the outtake photos from the cover shoot, we can clearly see how they tried many different poses. Paul isn't always holding the clarinet. Sometimes it's a brass instrument. And notice how Paul moves around the set. He's not always in the middle, nor does he always stand under the supposed death hand. For a number of shots, Ringo takes his place. Wow. As for the other appearances of hands above Paul's head, this is pure coincidence. Also, there's no evidence of hands above head signifying anything to do with death or the dead.
Why don't you been saying that? I thought that was
doesn't
facts.
hold up when you convert it to the UK standard format of day, month, then year. So it would actually read September 11th, which is a whole other can of worms.
No cap.
And while Paul didn't die on November 9th, it is an important day for John Lennon, as that's the day he met Yoko Ono at the Indica Gallery in London. As for the guitar made of flowers, according to photographer Peter Blake, that was an impromptu suggestion from one of the assistants during the shoot. The arrangement of flowers forming the word Paul is also a coincidence. And for Paul's OPB patch, when we look at alternate gatefold photos, we can clearly see that the patch actually stands for Ontario Provincial Police, or OPP. And again, the back cover photo was simply the favorite choice out of a series of photos. So any connection or meaning was purely coincidental. Same goes for where George is pointing. Moving to the music, the simplest explanation for the Beatles singing Billy Shears is that it's a rhyme for years, as Paul told Rolling Stone magazine in 1974.
I thought that's who Ringo. I thought Ringo was Billy Shears.
The car crash allusions in that song were based on the death of Tara Brown, who died when he crashed his sports car into a lamppost. The cover of Magical Mystery Tour is easily debunked by the fact that if you actually watch the TV special, it becomes abundantly clear that the walrus was actually John, not Paul. Now, the special wasn't widely available in the US until the 1970s, so this misunderstanding is forgivable. But wait a minute, if John really was the walrus, why would he sing otherwise on Glass Onion? Well, in an interview for Playboy magazine, John says he wrote that line as a joke, as he was feeling guilty for choosing Yoko over Paul. Not to mention, Glass Onion was written in 1968, well before the fervor of the Paul is dead rumor. As for the phone number on the cover of Magical Mystery Tour, there never really was one obvious set of numbers that you could decipher from the stars. There was several numbers. So if this really was a clue for the fans, you'd think they would make this much clearer so there wouldn't be any confusion as to what phone number to call. Turning to page 3 of the booklet, the message in front of him should actually read, "I, you, was." Bad English for sure, but not so much a death clue. Paul without his shoes on isn't a symbol of death, but more a reflection of his personal choice. Who knows, maybe his feet get really hot all the time. I don't know. As for the shoes having blood stains, isn't it far more likely that it's a reflection of the red bass drum that they're next to? As for them being above page 13, a lucky coincidence. But what about that black flower Paul is wearing? Well, he said in his Life magazine interview that they ran out of red flowers. Now, this doesn't really explain away all doubt, as he can be clearly seen dancing with a bouquet of red flowers. I was about to say, they just ran out of red flowers? Now, the section of...
They just ran out of flowers. We have enough red flowers, Paul. So I'm sorry, we couldn't find enough roses in the world. Like, come on now, you couldn't find enough roses? Let's be serious, Paul.
Special. Now, the section of King Lear heard on I Am the Walrus was recorded on the fly. Pure coincidence. They literally turned on the radio while they were mixing that song, and it just so happened to capture that scene. The backwards section is really up to interpretation, and it says more about the power of suggestion than actually saying Paul is dead. But what about John saying I buried Paul at the end of Strawberry Fields Forever? Well, if you listen to an alternate take on the Beatles Anthology 2, you can clearly hear him say cranberry sauce. Moving on to the White Album, the photo of Billy Shears is more likely just McCartney wearing glasses. Maybe it's even a passport photo. The backwards message at the end of I'm So Tired doesn't say Paul is dead, man, miss him, but it's actually forwards with John saying, Monsieur, Monsieur, how about another one? Beatles biographer, historian, and authority Mark Lewinson confirmed this when he listened to the master tapes. However, I can't explain away the eerie coincidence of Turn Me On, Dead Man on Revolution 9. It is what it is.
That whole
Moving on
song
to
just
Abbey
eerie.
Road, Fred Laborde admits to
Revolutionary.
making up all the clues he listed in his 1969 newspaper article. As for Paul being barefoot, it was
Of
a hot
course.
day out and he kicked off his sandals to be more comfortable. Outtake photos confirm this, and they also dispel any significance with the way he's walking. They only took 6 photos for the cover, and the one with Paul at a step simply looked the best. As for the Volkswagen, photographer Ian McMillan states that they tried to get it moved for the photo, but the owner couldn't be found. Since they were blocking traffic to take the photo, there wasn't enough time to get it towed, and so the car stayed. And by the way, the license plate actually reads 281F. But what about the first Paul is dead rumor back in 1967? Paul's Mini Cooper was involved in an accident, but he wasn't in the car. It was being driven by Robert Frazier's assistant while Paul was traveling in another car with Mick Jagger. As for the accident that supposedly killed Paul on November 9th, 1966, there's no evidence of one occurring, and it's well documented that Paul was on vacation during this time. Paul did crash his moped in December on November 9th, 1966. There's no evidence of one occurring, and it's well documented that Paul was on vacation during this time.
So wait.
Paul did crash his moped in December of '65, but he only suffered a chipped tooth and a scar on his upper lip, which ultimately led to him wanting to grow a mustache to hide the scar. As for Capitol Records being behind the stunt, they deny any involvement, claiming they had no publicity people that could come up with something so elaborate.
I bet y'all didn't. SpongeBob. Sinister Squidward. Hold on, I'm finna watch this, y'all. I'll be right back.
I'm thinking of killing myself. But before I kill myself, I want to kill the people I hate.
Oh, no, this school, he on school shooter vibes. Hold on. Let's get back to the video. Oh, shit.
Elaborate. And after 50 years, no one who worked for Capitol has ever come forward to say otherwise. Guilty of butchering Beatles albums, oh yes. Butchering Paul, not so much.
2009 remasters.
In the end, I think it's nearly impossible to find someone that could resemble Paul McCartney so well, but also be as talented as him, and then go on to have the career he did after the Beatles. Not to mention all the people involved to keep the cover-up a secret, from management to close friends and significant others. Any one of them could have made millions by spilling the beans, yet no one has. But for me, the most convincing argument I've read against the Paul is dead theory is that the clues are only clues if you're looking for them with the idea of Paul's death. Meaning, there really isn't a clue that outright says
confirmation
Paul is dead.
bias.
And I know
I did
confirmation bias. Clues that seem to say otherwise, but you really have to stretch the imagination to hear Paul's name. It's all up to interpretation and wishful thinking. You hear what you want to hear. Ultimately, I'm sure you could come up with clues that fit any narrative you want, like the Beatles were really Satanists. I mean, Aleister Crowley is on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's after all. Paul himself still gets asked about the whole fiasco, and for the most part, he takes it in stride, often playing into it.
But it was a little bit strange, because people did start looking at me like...
Okay.
Is it him?
I'll be looking at him like that too, like, come on.
Or making fun of it as he did on his live album from '93, even down to the Beatle having the license plate of 51 is, as he was 51 in 1993.
That's hard.
Though direct references to the rumors seem to have died down in recent years, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone unaware of its lasting effects on popular culture. I mean, the very idea of playing a record backwards to reveal hidden messages owes a large debt to this very conspiracy theory. Much of the information on the Paul is dead rumor thrives on the internet, and you can really enjoy diving into that rabbit hole, but you gotta be smart when browsing the back pages of the web, and that's where Dashlane comes in. It's the one tool I use to stay safe online, including VPN, password manager, and much more. Dashlane makes it super easy to create. On the flip side.
Wow, great video, beautiful video. Beautiful video, Vinyl Rewind. All right, let's go. Okay, so that was the Paul McCartney really died in 1966, and I'm just gonna say it right now. I didn't expect this video to be that interesting, right? I thought it was just gonna be a bunch of hogwash, a bunch of gobbledygook, and that's probably what it is. But a lot of this made sense, bro. Like, I promise you, throughout the first 10 minutes, it was just feeling like there was too many coincidences lining up for this not to be true. But then Vinyl Rewind also made a good point at the end about confirmation bias. Like, I came into this video thinking, yo, is Paul dead? So obviously all those examples from the first 10 minutes probably would make me, it would make me believe that, bro. So, And to think the rumor literally just started from what, a bunch of college kids writing writing a link in the paper, and then it just became like this big thing, one of the biggest theories, like, you know, scandals, if you want to call it that, in pop culture history. That's amazing. Like, that's amazing. And, yo, this has to be like the first time like something like this happened in popular culture, right? Like something of this magnitude where a band is so popular that fans are coming up with theories, buying new albums to try to like rewind it, listen to this, find this. Like, this sounds like some 2010, 2000s ass shit. This happened in 1968. Like, that is crazy. That just shows the power of the Beatles, man. This rumor started in 1966. Here I am, 24-year-old black kid from Michigan in 2024, trying to get more information on this rumor. Like, that's insane. That's insane, yo. That's insane. Great video. But bang up job, Vinyl Rewind. You know what I'm saying? We'll definitely be back to see a couple more of his whoops in the future, y'all. Most definitely. Yeah, but with all that being said, I'm definitely going to let y'all go now. The Led Zeppelin 2 reaction will be out tomorrow. Right in there, right after the Led Zeppelin reaction. I think Wednesday, starting Wednesday, we're going to be on the Beatles marathon. It's going to be a Beatles month for the rest of February on this channel, man. So, you know, prepare for that. Be ready. Tune in. It's going to be great content. It's going to be a great community feeling. Subscribe, man. If you ain't subscribed, like it, all that, subscribe right now, man. Fuck it. But with that being said, it's your boy Life of Darius, a.k.a. Julie Spears, and I'm Jesus Sandals, man. Rest in peace, Paul, brother.